You're fired, Marcus sneered, leaning back in his Italian leather chair, fingers steepled like some corporate villain from a movie. You're just too much of a distraction for the male employees. His eyes roamed over me one last time with that disgusting smirk I'd endured for months, lingering on my blouse before meeting my gaze with calculated cruelty. Pack your things and get out. Security will escort you. You're fired, Marcus sneered, leaning back in his Italian leather chair, fingers steepled like some corporate villain from a movie. You're just too much of a distraction for the male employees. His eyes roamed over me one last time with that disgusting smirk I'd endured for months, lingering on my blouse before meeting my gaze with calculated cruelty. Pack your things and get out. Security will escort you. I stood there in his corner office on the 32nd floor of the Willis Tower, looking down at the man who had just shattered my career with a single sentence. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind him, Chicago's skyline stretched endlessly, a testament to ambition and success that now felt mocking. 3 years of 60-hour weeks, of building his company's entire digital marketing strategy from the ground up, of generating over $8 million in revenue, all dismissed because I was apparently too pretty to work there. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same appearance that had made me a target was about to become his downfall. But Marcus Blackwood had no idea what he'd just unleashed. He thought he was getting rid of a problem employee, silencing another woman who dared to challenge his authority. Instead, he'd just created his worst nightmare, a brilliant woman with nothing left to lose and all the tools necessary to destroy him. As I turned to leave his office, my heels clicking against the marble floor with deliberate precision, I wasn't thinking about the humiliation or the unfairness. I was thinking about the nuclear option I'd prepared months ago, just in case Marcus ever pushed too far. The digital keys to his kingdom that he'd so trustingly placed in my hands. He had no idea that in exactly 47 minutes, his world would begin to crumble. Before we dive into how I brought down a multi-million-dollar company with nothing but a laptop, an unbreakable will, and 3 years of strategic planning, I want to thank each of you for being part of this incredible community. Your support means everything to ambitious women who refuse to be silenced by powerful men who think they can abuse their positions without consequence. If you've ever been underestimated because of how you look, if you've ever been made to feel like your success was somehow threatening to insecure men, this story is for you. Hit that subscribe button to join over 200,000 others who believe that revenge served cold is the sweetest dish of all, and that sometimes karma needs a little help from those brave enough to serve it. My name is Sophia Chen, and 3 months ago I was the head of digital marketing at Blackwood Industries, one of Chicago's fastest growing tech consulting firms. But my story doesn't begin in that glass tower overlooking Lake Michigan. It begins in a cramped studio apartment in Chinatown, where my immigrant parents worked 16-hour days to give their only daughter a chance at the American dream. My mother, Li Wei, cleaned office buildings at night after spending her days as a seamstress in a factory that barely paid minimum wage. My father, Chen Ming, drove a taxi during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store on weekends. They spoke broken English but fluent determination, sacrificing everything so I could attend Northwestern University and pursue my MBA. I wasn't just beautiful, though the combination of my Chinese mother's delicate features and my father's strong jawline had created what magazines would call exotic beauty. I was brilliant. Graduated summa cum laude with a double major in business and communications. Then earned my MBA with a focus on digital marketing strategy while working 3 part-time jobs to pay for it. I started at Blackwood Industries fresh out of Northwestern, hungry to prove myself in the corporate world and justify every sacrifice my parents had made. The starting salary of $68,000 was more money than my parents had ever seen in a year combined. I was going to make them proud, build a career that would lift our entire family out of poverty, and show the world that the quiet girl from Chinatown could conquer corporate America. Marcus Blackwood was everything I thought I wanted in a boss when I first walked into his corner office for the interview. Tall, silver-haired, with the kind of confident smile that spoke of generational wealth and Ivy League connections. His company occupied 3 floors of prime real estate in downtown Chicago, with modern furniture, exposed brick walls, and motivational quotes etched in glass throughout the space. He spoke passionately about innovation, disruption, and building something revolutionary in the tech consulting space. "We need someone who can think outside the box," he'd said during that first interview, his blue eyes crinkling with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm. "Someone who isn't afraid to challenge conventional wisdom. Your academic record is impressive, but I'm more interested in your vision for the future of digital marketing." I'd pitched him a comprehensive strategy for leveraging social media, content marketing, and data analytics to transform how B2B companies approached client acquisition. I'd spent weeks preparing, researching his company, identifying gaps in their current approach, and developing solutions that could revolutionize their business model. Marcus hired me on the spot. For the first 6 months, it felt like a dream job. I was given autonomy to build the digital marketing department from scratch, unlimited budget for tools and software, and direct access to Marcus for strategic decisions. I worked tirelessly, arriving at the office by 7 a.m. and rarely leaving before 9 p.m. I built their website from the ground up, created social media strategies that generated millions of impressions, and developed lead generation funnels that brought in more qualified prospects than they'd ever seen. The results were undeniable. In my first year, I increased their online visibility by 400%, generated over $2 million in new business directly attributable to my campaigns, and established Blackwood Industries as a thought leader in the Chicago tech scene. Trade publications quoted me in articles about innovative marketing strategies. Competitors tried to poach me with increasingly generous offers. Marcus seemed thrilled with my success, at first. The warning signs started subtly, like drops of poison in a glass of wine. Comments about my appearance during client meetings. "Sophia, you look particularly stunning today. I bet that's why the Johnson account went so smoothly." Or suggestions about my wardrobe during team meetings. "Maybe consider the navy suit instead of the red dress for the board presentation. We want them focused on your brilliant strategy, not distracted by other things." I convinced myself it was paternal concern, the kind of advice an experienced mentor gives to a young professional learning to navigate corporate politics. I was 26, ambitious, and perhaps naive enough to believe that excellence would always triumph over prejudice. But the comments escalated. During late-night strategy sessions, Marcus would position himself unnecessarily close to my chair, his hand brushing my shoulder as he leaned over to look at my laptop screen. He'd ask personal questions about my dating life, whether I was lonely, working such demanding hours, if I'd ever considered that my exotic beauty might be intimidating potential romantic partners. "You're so dedicated to your career," he'd say, refilling my wine glass during these after-hours meetings. "I worry you're missing out on the experiences a beautiful young woman should be having. Life isn't just about quarterly reports and conversion rates." I began documenting everything Every inappropriate comment recorded in a private notes app on my phone, complete with timestamps and context. Every uncomfortable interaction logged in an encrypted file on my personal laptop. Screenshots of text messages that arrived at inappropriate hours. Save copies of emails that contained veiled references to my appearance rather than my work. Performance. I wasn't naive, I knew exactly where this was heading. And I was building an arsenal for when the inevitable confrontation arrived. The first major incident occurred during the annual company retreat to a luxury resort in Lake Geneva. Marcus had booked adjoining suites for the senior leadership team, which included myself, the CFO, and the heads of operations and sales. What I didn't realize until arriving was that my suite adjoined directly with Marcus's, connected by a door that locked from both sides. The first night, after a team dinner filled with expensive wine and congratulatory toasts about our record-breaking quarter, I returned to my room to find the adjoining door slightly ajar. I closed it firmly and engaged the deadbolt. But the message was clear. The next morning, Marcus cornered me during breakfast on the terrace overlooking the lake. "I hope you're comfortable in your suite," he said, his voice carrying that subtle undertone I'd learned to recognize. I specifically requested that arrangement so we could collaborate more easily on the new client strategy. "The strategy we're presenting on Monday?" I asked, keeping my voice professional despite the warning bells in my head. "I thought we'd finalized that presentation last week." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "There are always last-minute adjustments to consider. Perhaps we could review it tonight, after the team dinner. My suite has a better view for inspiration." I declined politely, suggesting we schedule a proper meeting in the conference room the following morning. Marcus's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a flash of annoyance quickly masked by his practiced charm. "Of course," he said, "though I do hope you're not becoming one of those overly cautious employees who can't distinguish between professional collaboration and other things. Paranoia isn't attractive in the business world, Sophia." That's when I realized the game had changed. This wasn't just inappropriate behavior, it was psychological manipulation designed to make me question my own judgment, to isolate me from support systems, and to gradually erode my professional confidence until I became vulnerable to his advances. I spent that weekend documenting every interaction, every subtle threat, every attempt to undermine my perception of events. I researched employment law, sexual harassment policies, and began quietly reaching out to employment attorneys for preliminary consultations. But Marcus was more strategic than I'd anticipated. Upon returning from the retreat, I noticed subtle changes in office dynamics. Projects I'd been leading were suddenly reassigned for better resource allocation. Meetings I'd previously run were scheduled without my input. Junior employees who'd once sought my guidance began avoiding eye contact in the hallways. When I questioned these changes, Marcus had reasonable explanations for everything. "We're restructuring to optimize efficiency," he'd explain with that patronizing smile. "You're so talented, Sophia. But sometimes talent needs to be channeled more strategically. I'm looking out for your career development." The isolation was methodical and devastating. I watched my authority erode day by day. My team's respect diminish as they witnessed my diminished role. My professional identity dissolve while Marcus maintained plausible deniability for every slight. But he made one crucial mistake: he underestimated my intelligence and my patience. While Marcus was busy undermining my position, I was busy building my insurance policy. As head of digital marketing, I had administrative access to virtually every system that kept Blackwood Industries running. Customer relationship management software, email marketing platforms, social media accounts, website hosting, domain registration, vendor relationships, client databases, all of it flowed through systems I'd personally implemented and maintained. More importantly, I'd spent 3 years building personal relationships with every major client. These weren't Marcus's accounts, they were mine. I'd courted them through months of personalized attention, delivered results that exceeded their expectations, and earned their trust through consistent excellence. They had my personal contact information, followed my professional social media accounts, and considered me the face of Blackwood Industries' digital strategy. I began preparing for war while maintaining perfect professional composure. I set up encrypted backup systems, created redundant access points to critical platforms, and documented every system vulnerability that could be exploited if necessary. I established relationships with key vendors, ensuring they understood that I was their primary contact and decision-maker for all digital services. Most importantly, I started building my exit strategy. I quietly reached out to headhunters, updated my portfolio with detailed case studies of my successes at Blackwood, and began nurturing relationships with competitors who'd been trying to recruit me for years. Marcus thought he was slowly strangling my career. Instead, he was giving me time to build the weapons that would destroy his. The final confrontation came on a Tuesday morning in November. Chicago's winter had arrived early, coating the city in a layer of ice that made everything look deceptively beautiful while hiding deadly hazards beneath the surface. I should have taken it as an omen. I'd arrived at the office at my usual time, 6:30 a.m., when the building was still quiet and I could work without interruption. My morning routine included checking overnight analytics, responding to client emails from different time zones, and preparing daily reports that had become essential to the company's operations. At 8:15, my phone rang with a call from Marcus's assistant, requesting my immediate presence in the conference room. The same conference room where I'd presented strategies that generated millions in revenue. Where I'd pitched innovative campaigns that revolutionized our client relationships. Where I'd built my reputation as one of Chicago's most promising digital marketing professionals. I arrived to find Marcus seated at the head of the polished mahogany table, flanked by Janet Murphy from Human Resources and David Walsh, the company's legal counsel. The formal arrangement immediately told me this wasn't a strategy meeting, it was an execution. Janet avoided eye contact entirely, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged a stack of official-looking documents. David maintained professional composure, but I caught him glancing nervously at Marcus as if awaiting instructions. And Marcus looked like a man savoring a long-anticipated victory. Sophia, he began, gesturing to the chair positioned directly across from him like a defendant facing judgment. Please, sit down. We have some serious matters to discuss. I remained standing, my purse clutched in both hands, every instinct screaming danger while my rational mind catalogued the exits, the witnesses, the potential legal implications of whatever was about to unfold. I prefer to stand, I said calmly. What's this about? Marcus exchanged a meaningful look with David, who nodded almost imperceptibly before speaking. We've received several complaints about your conduct in the workplace, David announced, his voice carrying the measured tone of someone delivering prepared remarks. Specifically, concerns about inappropriate behavior that's creating a hostile work environment for other employees. The audacity was breathtaking. After months of documented harassment, after systematic attempts to undermine my authority, after clear evidence of sexual misconduct, they were flipping the script and making me the aggressor. What specific complaints? I asked. My voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. Janet finally spoke. Her words barely above a whisper. Multiple male employees have reported feeling uncomfortable with your interactions. They describe behavior they consider unprofessional and inappropriate, such as Marcus leaned forward, clearly enjoying himself, flirtatious behavior during meetings, inappropriate clothing choices designed to distract and manipulate male colleagues, using your appearance to gain unfair advantages in client negotiations. Each accusation felt like a physical blow. They were weaponizing my appearance, my success, my very presence against me. Every achievement I'd earned through intelligence and hard work was being reframed as sexual manipulation. I want names, I demanded. I want specific incidents with dates and witnesses. I want to see these complaints in writing. That's confidential, David replied smoothly. But the pattern of behavior is clear and well documented. Multiple sources, consistent reports, credible witnesses. The room fell silent except for the hum of the air conditioning and the distant sound of Chicago traffic 32 floors below. I realized this had been planned for months. They'd been building a case, manufacturing evidence, preparing witnesses to support whatever narrative Marcus needed to justify my removal. But I'd been preparing too. Last month I filed a formal complaint with HR documenting Marcus's inappropriate conduct, I said, looking directly at Janet. Sexual harassment, unwanted advances, creating a hostile work environment. That complaint triggered a mandatory investigation under company policy. Has that investigation been completed? Janet's face flushed red. We found no evidence to support your allegations. You found no evidence because you never conducted an investigation, I replied. I have timestamps showing that my complaint was never logged in the HR system, never reviewed by the external investigators required by our employee handbook, never escalated to the board of directors as mandated by our sexual harassment policy. Marcus's confident expression faltered slightly. He hadn't expected me to understand corporate policy so thoroughly, to have prepared for their attempt to discredit my complaint. Furthermore, I continued, pulling out my phone. I have 3 years of documented evidence. Text messages, emails, audio recordings of inappropriate conversations, witness statements from other female employees who've experienced similar harassment. The phone felt heavy in my hand, weighted with the power to destroy reputations and end careers. But I also knew that producing this evidence now would only trigger their legal defenses, give them time to craft counter-narratives, and potentially compromise any future legal action. Marcus recovered quickly, his mask slipping back into place. Sophia, you're clearly under a great deal of stress. Perhaps you're misremembering events, misinterpreting friendly conversations, projecting your own insecurities onto innocent professional interactions. The gaslighting was masterful in its cruelty. He was suggesting that my perception of reality was compromised, that my intelligence, the one thing I'd always relied upon, was somehow corrupted by feminine hysteria or professional paranoia. That's when he delivered the knockout punch. The decision has been made, Marcus announced, his voice taking on the tone of finality. Your employment with Blackwood Industries is terminated effective immediately. Your behavior has created liability issues for the company, and we simply cannot continue to expose our employees and clients to this kind of toxic environment. He slid a document across the table toward me. This is a separation agreement. Sign it, and you'll receive 2 weeks of severance pay plus continuation of your health insurance for 30 days. Refuse to sign, and you'll receive nothing except a negative employment reference. I picked up the document. scanning the legal language that essentially forced me to admit guilt, surrender my right to pursue legal action, and agree never to disparage the company or its employees in exchange for minimal compensation. I need time to review this with my attorney, I said. You have 5 minutes to decide, Marcus replied. Sign it now, or security will escort you from the building with nothing. The ultimatum was designed to pressure me into compliance, to force an emotional decision that would protect them from future liability. They wanted me panicked, desperate, willing to accept any terms just to avoid the humiliation of a public ejection. Instead, I felt an eerie calm settle over me like a cold blanket. The same sensation I'd experienced during final exams, during client presentations, during moments when everything was on the line and only perfect execution would suffice. I set the document back on the table unsigned. I won't be signing this, I announced. And I won't be leaving quietly. Marcus's confident smile returned. Then you'll be leaving with nothing except the knowledge that you destroyed your own career. Through your inability to behave professionally. He pressed a button on the conference phone. And within seconds, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway, clearly. They'd been waiting outside for his signal. Gentlemen, please escort Ms. Chen to her desk so she can collect her personal belongings. Then ensure she exits the building. Her access credentials have been revoked. As I stood to leave, Marcus delivered his final insult. The words that would echo in my mind during everything that followed. Maybe this will teach you that looking like a supermodel doesn't guarantee success in the business world. Some workplaces need substance over style. And frankly, Sophia, you've shown us that beneath all that beauty, there's really nothing else worth keeping. The security guards flank me as we walk through the office toward my desk. Colleagues I'd worked with for 3 years averted their gazes, pretending to be absorbed in their computers while I gathered my personal items under armed escort. The humiliation was designed to be public, to serve as a warning to other employees who might dare to challenge Marcus's authority. But as I cleaned out my desk drawers, packing family photos and personal mementos into a cardboard box like some corporate criminal, I wasn't thinking about the embarrassment or the unfairness of it all. I was thinking about revenge. The elevator descended 32 floors in silence, carrying me away from 3 years of my life and toward an uncertain future. But as the doors opened onto the marble lobby of the Willis Tower, I wasn't walking toward uncertainty, I was walking toward war. The security guards escorted me to the street, where Chicago's November wind cut through my coat like a blade. I stood on the sidewalk, clutching my box of personal belongings, watching office workers hurry past on their way to jobs they still had. For a moment, the enormity of what had just happened threatened to overwhelm me. Then I remembered Marcus's final words, and the humiliation crystallized into pure, focused rage. I hailed a taxi and gave the driver my apartment address in Lincoln Park. During the 20-minute ride through Chicago traffic, I pulled out my phone and began the systematic destruction of Marcus Blackwood's empire. See, when you're the head of digital marketing for a tech consulting firm, you become the central nervous system of the company's online presence. Every website, every social media account, every email marketing platform, every client database, every vendor relationship, it all flows through systems you've personally implemented and maintain. Marcus had made a crucial error in firing me before securing those systems in his arrogance. He'd assumed that removing me from the building would somehow remove me from the digital infrastructure I'd spent 3 years building. He had no idea that most of our critical systems were accessible from anywhere with an internet connection, and that I'd maintained administrative access through personal accounts and backup credentials that existed outside the corporate network. My apartment was a modest one-bedroom overlooking Lincoln Park, furnished with the practical efficiency of someone who spent most of their waking hours at the office. But it had everything I needed for what I was about to do: a high-speed internet connection, my personal laptop with encrypted access to every system I'd ever administered, and complete privacy to execute my plan without interruption. I set up my laptop on the dining table, opened a bottle of wine that I'd been saving for a celebration that would never come, and began the most satisfying work of my professional career. Phase 1 was intelligence gathering. I accessed the company's email servers through my personal administrative account. Marcus had been so focused on revoking my official credentials that he'd forgotten about the backup access I'd established for emergency purposes. For the next 2 hours, I methodically downloaded every email, document, and file that could serve as evidence of the company's operations, financial status, and most importantly, Marcus's personal conduct. The treasure trove was even richer than I'd expected. Emails discussing my firing had been flowing since early morning, with Marcus instructing department heads on the official narrative they were to repeat if asked about my departure. There were also financial documents showing that Blackwood Industries was in far worse shape than anyone realized: accounts payable overdue by months, client payments delayed, cash flow problems that threatened the company's survival. But the most damning discoveries were in Marcus's personal email folders. Affairs with multiple female employees over the years, each one following the same pattern: initial mentorship, gradual isolation, inappropriate advances, and eventual termination when they refused his demands or threatened to expose him. I wasn't his first victim. I was just the most recent in a long line of women whose careers he'd destroyed to protect his reputation. There were also communications with his wife, Catherine Blackwood, discussing their pending divorce and his desperate attempts to hide assets before the settlement. Marcus wasn't just a sexual predator, he was also a financial fraud who'd been systematically looting his own company to fund a lifestyle he could no longer afford. Phase 2 was strategic communication. I began reaching out to every major client I'd personally brought to Blackwood Industries over the past 3 years. These weren't cold sales calls, these were personal conversations with decision-makers who trusted my expertise, valued my judgment, and considered me the primary reason for their relationship with the company. The calls followed a careful script I'd mentally rehearsed during the taxi ride home. Professional, factual, focused on business continuity rather than personal grievances. Hi Jennifer, this is Sophia Chen from Blackwood Industries. I wanted to personally inform you that I'm no longer with the company as of today. I know how important the quarterly campaign launch is to your team, and I wanted to ensure a smooth transition of your account management. Michael, it's Sophia. I'm calling to let you know that I've left Blackwood Industries and wanted to discuss the status of your ongoing projects. I have some concerns about continuity that I think we should address. David, this is Sophia Chen. I wanted to reach out personally to inform you that I'm no longer handling your account at Blackwood Industries. Given the sensitive nature of your upcoming product launch, I thought you should know about this change immediately. Each conversation was carefully documented, with follow-up emails sent to create written records of my professional courtesy in notifying clients about my departure. But the subtext was clear: the person responsible for their success was gone, and they should be concerned about their future relationship with the company. By 6 p.m., I'd contacted 17 major clients representing over 60% of Blackwood's annual revenue. The responses were immediate and predictable. Sophia, what happened? Your campaigns have been our most successful marketing initiatives in years. This is concerning. Who's going to manage our account moving forward? We specifically chose Blackwood Industries because of your expertise. Are you joining a competitor? Can you recommend someone else who understands our business as well as you do? Phase 3 was the nuclear option, social media warfare conducted with surgical precision. I'd built Blackwood Industries' entire social media presence from the ground up. LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, every platform, every account, every piece of content had been created and managed through systems I'd personally implemented. More importantly, I'd maintained administrative access through my personal devices for the countless evenings and weekends I'd worked from home to keep our social media presence active. I started with LinkedIn, the platform where our professional reputation lived and died. At 7 p.m. Chicago time, when the East Coast business day was ending and maximum engagement was guaranteed, I published a carefully crafted post that would change everything. After 3 years of growing Blackwood Industries' revenue by over 400% through innovative digital marketing strategies, I was terminated today. The stated reason? That I was too much of a distraction for male employees and that my appearance was inappropriate for a professional environment. Here's what really happened when I refused my married boss's advances and filed a sexual harassment complaint. The post included no inflammatory language, no emotional accusations, no unprofessional attacks, just facts, presented with the same analytical precision I'd brought to every marketing campaign. Screenshots of inappropriate text messages, documented patterns of harassment, evidence of systematic discrimination against female employees. I tagged every major client, every industry leader, every business publication in Chicago, and every influential contact I'd built relationships with over 3 years of networking events, conferences, and professional organizations. The response was immediate and explosive. Within 30 minutes, the post had generated over 200 comments, most of them from other women sharing similar experiences with workplace harassment. Industry leaders began sharing the post with their own networks, adding commentary about the need for accountability in corporate leadership. By 8 p.m., business journalists from 3 major Chicago publications had sent direct messages requesting interviews. By 9 p.m., the post had been shared over 500 times and was trending in Chicago business circles. But I was just getting started. Phase 4 targeted the company's operational infrastructure with the precision of a surgeon, removing a tumor. Every system I'd built, every platform I'd implemented, every digital service that kept Blackwood Industries running, I had administrative access to all of it. And Marcus had forgotten to revoke my credentials before firing me. The company website was first 3 years ago. I'd migrated their entire web presence to a custom-built platform hosted on servers I'd personally selected and configured. The domain registration, hosting services, content management system, and security certificates were all tied to accounts I'd established and maintained. At 10 p.m., I began implementing systematic changes designed to cripple their online presence during their busiest sales period. I didn't delete content or crash servers. That would have been illegal and unprofessional. Instead, I exercised my administrative authority to update their systems in ways that created cascading failures. Domain settings were modified to redirect traffic through slower servers. Content management permissions were restructured to require additional approval processes for any changes. Security certificates were updated with new validation requirements that would take days to process. Email marketing platforms were upgraded to new service plans that required manual verification of all subscriber lists. By midnight, their website was loading at crawling speeds. Their email marketing campaigns were suspended pending verification, and their social media management tools were locked pending security updates that I'd triggered by changing administrative passwords. The changes were all technically legitimate. I was still listed as the authorized administrator for these systems, and I was implementing security improvements and performance optimizations that any responsible IT manager might make. The fact that these improvements would take weeks to resolve and cost tens of thousands of dollars to fix wasn't my problem. Phase 5 was the most personally satisfying, reaching out to Marcus's wife with information that would end their marriage and destroy his financial security. Catherine Blackwood wasn't just any spouse. She was the daughter of Harrison Investment Group, the private equity firm that had provided Blackwood Industries with its primary funding. Her father's money had kept Marcus's company afloat during the early years, and her family's connections had opened doors throughout Chicago's business community. Catherine was also, according to the emails I'd discovered, completely unaware of her husband's serial infidelity and financial fraud. At 1 a.m., I sent her a carefully worded email with a subject line that would ensure she read it immediately. Information about Marcus that you need to see immediately, from a concerned colleague. The email was respectful but devastating. I introduced myself as a former employee, explained my professional relationship with Marcus, and attached selected evidence of his affairs, his financial crimes, and his systematic abuse of female employees. I included screenshots of his emails discussing strategies to hide assets from their divorce proceedings, records of company funds used to pay for hotel rooms and gifts for his mistresses, and documented patterns of harassment that painted a picture of a man completely different from the husband she thought she knew. I concluded with an offer to provide additional information if needed and the contact information for my attorney, in case she wanted to coordinate our efforts to hold Marcus accountable for his actions. I fell asleep at my laptop around 3 a.m., exhausted but exhilarated by the night's work. I woke 6 hours later to my phone buzzing incessantly with notifications, calls, and messages that told me my plan was working even better than I'd hoped. The LinkedIn post had gone viral overnight, generating over 2,000 comments, 5,000 shares, and attracting attention from national media outlets. My phone showed 17 missed calls from Marcus, progressing from angry to desperate to panicked as the night had worn on. I listened to his voicemails with growing satisfaction. Sophia, you need to call me immediately. This is illegal, and you're going to face serious consequences. Goddamn it. Fix this right now. Do you have any idea what you're doing to this company? Please, Sophia, we can work something out. Just call me back and we can discuss a settlement. The servers are down. The website isn't working. Clients are calling asking questions. You're destroying everything I've built. My wife is threatening to leave me. She's talking to lawyers. Please, just tell me what you want. I deleted the voicemails without responding and checked my email. Instead, the inbox was flooded with messages that painted a picture of Marcus's world collapsing in real time. From Jennifer Martinez at Global Dynamics. Sophia, we've decided to terminate our contract with Blackwood Industries immediately. We'd like to discuss continuing our marketing relationship with whatever company you join next. From Michael Thompson at Venture Capital Partners. After seeing your LinkedIn post and reviewing our relationship with Blackwood, we're pulling our account. Can you recommend another agency with your level of expertise? From David Park at Innovation Labs. We're suspending all projects with Blackwood pending investigation of the allegations. We'd like to hire you directly as a consultant if you're available. 12 major clients had terminated their contracts overnight. Another 8 had suspended ongoing projects pending review of recent developments. The company's annual revenue had been cut by over 70% in less than 12 hours. But the most satisfying email came from Catherine Blackwood's attorney, confirming that she'd received my information and was proceeding with immediate legal action against her husband. The email thanked me for my courage in coming forward and requested my cooperation as a witness in both divorce and potential criminal proceedings. The second wave of destruction hit that afternoon. Local business publications had picked up the story, running detailed articles about corporate harassment and the need for accountability in Chicago's business community. Television news stations were requesting interviews, and several national outlets were investigating similar patterns at other companies. Marcus's reputation was being destroyed in real time, broadcast across every media platform and shared throughout the business community that had once respected him as a successful entrepreneur. But the death blow came from an unexpected source, his own employees. Emboldened by my public stand and the media attention, other female employees began coming forward with their own stories of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation. By the end of the week, 7 women had filed formal complaints with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, documenting a pattern of abuse that spanned Marcus's entire career. The company's remaining clients fled en masse as the scandal deepened. Vendors demanded immediate payment for outstanding invoices, fearing they'd never collect from a company in free fall. The building's property management company served eviction notices for unpaid rent. Within 2 weeks, Blackwood Industries filed for bankruptcy. Marcus tried everything to salvage his reputation, hiring crisis management firms, threatening lawsuits, even showing up at my apartment building demanding a meeting. But the damage was irreversible, amplified by social media and sustained by legitimate journalism that verified every allegation I'd made. 3 months later, I was sitting in the corner office of Morrison Digital Strategies, Chicago's fastest-growing marketing agency, reviewing quarterly reports that showed record-breaking growth largely attributable to clients who'd followed me from Blackwood Industries. My new title was Vice President of Digital Strategy, with a salary that was 40% higher than what Marcus had been paying me, plus equity stakes that made me a partial owner of the company. My team of 12 marketing professionals respected my leadership, valued my expertise, and created an environment where success was measured by results rather than appearance. The view from my new office was spectacular. Lake Michigan stretched endlessly to the horizon, and I could see the Willis Tower in the distance, where Marcus Blackwood had once ruled his little kingdom with such arrogance and cruelty. That kingdom was now ruins. The bankruptcy proceedings had revealed the full extent of Marcus's financial crimes. Years of embezzlement, fraudulent contracts, and hidden debts had left creditors fighting over scraps while former employees filed lawsuits for unpaid wages and benefits. The FBI had opened an investigation into his business practices, and federal prosecutors were considering charges related to fraud and tax evasion. His personal life had collapsed with equal thoroughness. Catherine's divorce attorney had discovered offshore accounts, hidden assets, and evidence of systematic financial abuse that ensured she would receive everything in their settlement. The prenuptial agreement Marcus had relied upon for protection was voided due to his fraudulent disclosure of assets and income. He'd lost his house in Lincoln Park, his luxury car collection, his membership at the exclusive Chicago Athletic Association, and most of his supposed friends who distanced themselves as soon as the scandal broke. The final humiliation came when he was forced to move into a studio apartment in a building I recognized from my early days in Chicago, the same neighborhood where I'd lived as a struggling graduate student, surviving on ramen noodles and determination while building the skills that would eventually destroy him. But perhaps the most satisfying revenge was professional rather than personal. The industry that had once celebrated Marcus Blackwood as an innovative leader now treated him as a cautionary tale. Business schools used his downfall as a case study in corporate ethics failures. HR professionals cited his behavior in training sessions about harassment prevention. Young entrepreneurs learned from his mistakes, understanding that building a sustainable business required more than charisma and connections. It required integrity, respect for employees, and genuine leadership rather than manipulation and abuse. I occasionally ran into former Blackwood Industries employees at industry events, networking functions, and professional conferences. Most had found new positions, though some struggled to rebuild careers damaged by association with the scandal. I helped where I could, providing references, making introductions, and sharing opportunities that might help them recover from Marcus's toxic leadership. Janet Murphy, the HR director who'd sat silently while I was humiliated, approached me at a downtown hotel during a marketing conference 6 months after the company's collapse. "Sophia," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "I wanted to apologize. I should have spoken up. Should have protected you. I was afraid of losing my job. But that's no excuse." I looked at this woman who'd been complicit in my destruction, who'd chosen her paycheck over doing what was right, who'd enabled Marcus's behavior through her silence and cowardice. "I understand fear, Janet," I replied, "but when you choose silence in the face of injustice, you become part of the problem. Your job was to protect employees from exactly the kind of harassment Marcus was inflicting. Instead, you helped him cover it up." She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I know. I can't undo what happened. But I want you to know that I've learned from this. I'm working for a nonprofit now, helping women who've experienced workplace harassment. It doesn't make up for my failures, but it's something." I felt no satisfaction in her suffering, no pleasure in her obvious regret. Revenge had taught me that destroying others, even those who deserved it, didn't heal the wounds they'd inflicted. It only created new scars, different damage, additional pain that rippled outward in ways you couldn't control or predict. "I hope you're sincere about that," I told her. "Because there are other women out there facing what I faced, and they need advocates who will stand up for them when it matters, not apologize afterward when it's safe." Success in revenge, I discovered, comes with complications you don't anticipate when you're planning your enemy's destruction. The media attention that had helped bring down Marcus also followed me into my new career, creating both opportunities and challenges I hadn't expected. I became an inadvertent spokesperson for workplace harassment victims, invited to speak at conferences, quoted in articles about corporate accountability, and sought out by journalists whenever a new harassment scandal broke. While I appreciated the platform to advocate for change, the constant attention sometimes overshadowed my professional accomplishments and reduced my identity to that of a victim rather than a successful businesswoman. Dating became complicated when potential partners could Google my name and read detailed accounts of my experiences with Marcus. Some men were intimidated by my public profile and the implication that I might expose their own bad behavior. Others were attracted to what they saw as vulnerability, assuming I'd be grateful for their interest after being damaged by my experiences. I learned to navigate these dynamics with the same strategic thinking I'd applied to marketing, campaigns, and corporate warfare. I was selective about interviews, careful about my public statements, and protective of my privacy in ways I'd never needed to be before becoming a public figure. But the most unexpected consequence was the responsibility I felt toward other women facing similar situations. My success in bringing down Marcus had inspired others to speak out against their own harassers. But not all of them had the resources, skills, or support systems necessary to survive the backlash that inevitably followed such revelations. I began quietly mentoring women who reached out for advice, sharing strategies for documenting harassment, connecting them with employment attorneys, and helping them build the professional networks that would support them if they decided to take action against their abusers. It became an informal network of survivors who supported each other through investigations, legal proceedings, and career rebuilding. We called ourselves the Phoenix Project, named for the mythical bird that rises from its own ashes, transformed and strengthened by the fire that was meant to destroy it. 1 year after destroying Marcus Blackwood's empire, I encountered him by chance at O'Hare Airport. I was returning from a business trip to New York, where I'd signed a major new client and delivered a keynote speech about innovation in digital marketing. He was sitting alone at a gate, waiting for a flight to somewhere, looking older and smaller than the powerful predator who'd terrorized me in his corner office. Our eyes met across the terminal, and for a moment, time seemed suspended. He looked away first, but then gathered his courage and approached me with the careful steps of a man who knew he was walking into enemy territory. "Sophia," he said, his voice lacking any of the confidence and authority I remembered. "Can we talk? Please?" I studied his face, seeing the toll that the past year had taken on him. The expensive suits had been replaced by off-the-rack clothing. The perfectly styled hair showed gray roots and thinning spots. The arrogant smirk had been replaced by the haunted expression of someone who'd lost everything and couldn't understand how it had happened so quickly. What could we possibly have to discuss? "Marcus?" He sat down in the chair across from me without invitation, leaning forward with the desperate intensity of someone making a final plea. "I know I made mistakes," he began, his words coming in a rush. "I know I hurt you, treated you unfairly, said things I shouldn't have said. But what you did, it destroyed everything. Not just my career, but hundreds of jobs, client relationships that took years to build, a company that employed good people who did nothing wrong." I listened without interruption, curious to hear how he would justify his behavior and frame himself as the victim of my supposed overreaction. "I lost my marriage, my home, my reputation. I can't find work anywhere in Chicago. The FBI investigation nearly led to criminal charges. I'm living in a studio apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda. Was your revenge really worth destroying so many lives?" The question hung in the air between us, weighted with his assumption that I might feel guilty about the collateral damage of my actions, that I might regret the thoroughness of his destruction. "Marcus," I said calmly, "you seem to have confused cause and effect. I didn't destroy your company, your marriage, or your reputation. I simply revealed the truth about who you really were." The destruction that followed was the natural consequence of years of lies, fraud, and abuse catching up with you. His face reddened with anger, and for a moment I saw a flash of the old Marcus, the predator who'd used his power to silence women and crush anyone who challenged his authority. "You could have handled this differently," he snapped. "We could have worked out a settlement, found a solution that didn't involve destroying everything I'd built. You chose nuclear warfare when a simple conversation might have resolved our misunderstanding. Our misunderstanding? I repeated, incredulous at his continued refusal to acknowledge the severity of his actions. Marcus, you sexually harassed me for months, systematically undermined my authority, fired me for refusing your advances, and tried to destroy my reputation to cover up your own crimes. You did the same thing to other women before me. This wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a pattern of predatory behavior that you assumed would never have consequences. He looked around nervously, aware that other passengers might be listening to our conversation. Keep your voice down, he hissed. Do you want to cause another scene? That's when I realized he still didn't understand what had happened to him. Still couldn't grasp that his downfall wasn't the result of one woman's vindictive overreaction, but the inevitable collapse of a system built on lies, exploitation, and abuse. Marcus, I said, lowering my voice not out of consideration for his embarrassment but out of pity for his complete inability to comprehend his own responsibility. I want you to understand something very clearly. What happened to you wasn't revenge. It was accountability. For the first time in your privileged life, your actions had consequences that you couldn't avoid, manipulate, or buy your way out of. I stood to leave, but turned back for one final comment. You asked if my revenge was worth destroying so many lives. The answer is that it wasn't revenge at all, it was justice. And justice isn't about what's convenient or comfortable or easy to manage. It's about ensuring that people who abuse their power face the consequences of their actions, so that other potential victims are protected from experiencing what I went through. I walked away from Marcus Blackwood for the last time, leaving him alone at that airport gate with nothing but his bitterness, his self-pity, and the consequences of choices he'd made long before I ever entered his orbit. 2 years after that encounter, I'm writing this story from my own corner office in a building that overlooks the same Chicago skyline I once admired from Marcus Blackwood's corporate tower. But this view is different, earned through merit rather than manipulation, built on integrity rather than exploitation, and sustained by relationships based on mutual respect rather than fear. Morrison Digital Strategies has grown into one of the Midwest's most respected marketing agencies, with a client roster that includes Fortune 500 companies, innovative startups, and nonprofit organizations working to make the world better. My team of 37 professionals includes several women who left toxic work environments to join our company, where excellence is rewarded regardless of gender, appearance, or willingness to tolerate inappropriate behavior. We've implemented policies that protect employees from harassment, created advancement opportunities based on merit, and established a culture where speaking truth to power is considered a strength rather than a threat. The Phoenix Project has evolved into a formal nonprofit organization that provides legal resources, career support, and advocacy for women facing workplace discrimination. I still receive messages from women who've read my story online, who've found courage in my experience to confront their own harassers, to leave toxic environments, to build careers that honor their intelligence and abilities rather than compromise their dignity. Some of their stories have happy endings, successful legal settlements, new opportunities, promotions that recognize their talents. Others face ongoing struggles, retaliation from employers, financial hardship, and the exhausting process of rebuilding professional lives damaged by those who abused their power. But all of them understand something that I learned during my darkest moment in Marcus Blackwood's office. That silence in the face of injustice only enables more injustice. And that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate someone who has nothing left to lose. Marcus Blackwood thought he was firing a pretty face who'd gotten too big for her britches. A woman whose value was determined by her appearance rather than her intelligence. Someone who would quietly accept defeat and disappear rather than fight back. Instead, he discovered that the most dangerous person in any room isn't the one who looks the most threatening, it's the one who's been systematically underestimated, who's had time to prepare for war, and who understands that sometimes burning everything down is the only way to build something better. The girl from Chinatown who'd once cleaned office buildings with her mother now sits in a corner office, employing dozens of people, generating millions in revenue, and using her platform to protect other women from predators who assume their power makes them untouchable. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But I've learned that justice is a dish best served publicly, completely, and with the absolute certainty that the consequences will follow the guilty party for the rest of their lives. Because some lessons can only be taught through total destruction. And some people only understand accountability when they've lost everything they thought made them powerful. Marcus Blackwood learned that lesson too late to save his empire, his marriage, or his reputation. But perhaps other predators, reading this story, will learn it early enough to change their behavior before they meet their own phoenix rising from the ashes of their cruelty. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt powerless in the face of workplace harassment or abuse, remember that your voice matters. Your worth isn't determined by others' opinions. And sometimes the most revolutionary act is refusing to accept treatment that diminishes your dignity. Hit that subscribe button to join over 500,000 readers who believe that justice delayed is justice denied. But justice served with precision and purpose can change the world one predator at a time. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's fighting their own battle against those who abuse their power. Someone who needs to know that they're not alone and that victory is possible even when the odds seem impossible. Because every empire built on exploitation contains the seeds of its own destruction. Sometimes those seeds just need the right person to water them.